It was a cold and blustery Halloween night on Elm Street. The wind howled through the trees, and the leaves swirled around in a wild dance. In the distance, a full moon rose above the rooftops, casting an eerie glow over the neighborhood. I was walking home from a Halloween party, dressed as a witch and humming a tune to myself. As I rounded the corner, I came to a house I had never seen before. It was old and dilapidated, with boarded-up windows and a sagging roof. The front yard was overgrown with weeds, and the porch light was flickering. I stopped and stared at the house, a strange chill running down my spine. I had heard stories about a haunted house on Elm Street, but I never thought I would actually see it. Taking a deep breath, I continued walking. I didn't want to be afraid on Halloween night. As I got closer to the house, I noticed that the front door was slightly ajar. I hesitated for a moment, but curiosity got the better of me. I stepped up to the door and peered inside. The house was dark and dusty, and I could barely see anything. I took a step inside, and the door creaked shut behind me. My heart pounded in my chest. As I felt my way through the darkness, the wind whistled through the cracks in the boarded-up windows. Suddenly, I heard a noise behind me. I turned around, but I couldn't see anything. "Who's there?" I called out, but there was no answer. I started to walk again, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I turned a corner and found myself in a large living room. The room was empty, but I could see that it had once been furnished. There was a fireplace in the corner, and a chandelier hung from the ceiling. I walked over to the fireplace and examined it. I noticed a pile of ashes in the grate and reached down to pick up a handful. As I looked at the ashes, I felt a strange sensation, as if I were being drawn into the fireplace. I dropped the ashes and stepped back, but the door was gone. I looked around in confusion. I was trapped. Panic set in, and I screamed for help, but no one could hear me. Suddenly, the room started to spin, and I fell to the ground, dizzy and nauseous. When I opened my eyes again, I was in a different room, standing in a long hallway. The walls were lined with portraits of people I didn't recognize. I started to walk down the hallway, passing by several locked doors. Finally, I came to a door at the end of the hallway. I tried to open it, but it was locked too. I pounded on the door and shouted for help, but no one answered. I started to cry, scared and alone. Suddenly, I heard a noise behind me. I turned around and saw that the portraits on the walls were moving. The people in the portraits started to come to life, stepping out of their frames and walking towards me. I screamed and ran back down the hallway, trying to find another door, but they were all locked. I was cornered. The people in the portraits surrounded me, their pale faces and sunken eyes smiling at me with blood-red grins. I closed my eyes and screamed. When I opened them again, I was back on the street, standing outside the haunted house. I turned and ran, not stopping until I reached my own house. I locked the doors and windows and huddled in my bed, too scared to sleep. I never went back to the haunted house on Elm Street, but sometimes on cold Halloween nights, when the wind is howling and the moon is full, I can still hear the screams of the people in the portraits. Years later, I had grown up and moved away from Elm Street. I had gotten married and had a family of my own, but I still couldn't forget the haunted house. One Halloween night, my daughter Sarah asked me to tell her a scary story. I hesitated for a moment, but then I decided to tell her the story of the haunted house on Elm Street. When I finished the story, Sarah was wide-eyed with fear. "Mommy," she said, "do you think the haunted house is still there?" I didn't know how to answer her. I hadn't been back to Elm Street in years, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the haunted house was still there. On a chilling Halloween night, in a small, seemingly ordinary town, a solitary daredevil named Mark made a bold decision. For years, the locals have whispered tales about a haunted, abandoned cemetery on the outskirts of town. It was said to be cursed, a place where restless spirits roamed and strange happenings occurred. I dared not venture there, especially not on Halloween, the night when the veil between the living and the dead was thinnest. But I was different. The allure of the unknown was irresistible, and so I set out to investigate the legend that had haunted the town for generations. The moon hung low in the dark, cloudy sky, casting an eerie glow over the town, and creating an atmosphere thick with mystery and anticipation. As I arrived at the cemetery, I felt a shiver run down my spine. The wrought iron gate creaked open, and I stepped onto the overgrown path leading deeper into the graveyard. The tombstones stood like silent sentinels, their names and dates obscured by time and weather. The crunching of leaves underfoot echoed in the stillness of the night. The atmosphere grew increasingly unsettling. The wind carried faint whispers that seemed to beckon me further into the darkness. Shadows danced between the tombstones, and the moonlight played tricks on my eyes, making the mausoleums seem like ominous figures lurking in the dark. Unbeknownst to me, I was not alone and on the tombstones. The air grew colder, and an unsettling presence hung in the atmosphere. I could hear faint, mournful whispers, like the echoes of long-forgotten prayers, and the sensation of being watched sent a chill down my spine. I ventured deeper into the heart of the cemetery, my flashlight cutting through the gloom. The unsettling secrets of the place began to reveal themselves. Fresh flowers, still vibrant, lay on graves that should have been long abandoned. Unexplained footsteps, as if someone had just walked past, left imprints in the soft earth. It was as if the cemetery itself was a living entity, holding onto its own secrets and unwilling to release them. As I approached a particularly ancient and decrepit mausoleum, I heard a faint, eerie moan from within. Panic surged through me as I realized that I was not alone. Something or someone was here with me among the tombstones. I slowly pushed open the mausoleum door, and the creaking echoed through the night. What I found inside would haunt my nightmares for years to come. A flickering candle revealed a chamber adorned with symbols and strange writings. The walls were lined with human skulls, and in the center of the room, an ornate coffin lay open, empty. The unsettling secrets of the cemetery and its eerie inhabitants were more than I had bargained for. In the dimly lit graveyard, I had uncovered a world of darkness and despair, and it was clear that I was not welcome there. As I approached the ornate coffin, the flickering candle's light cast eerie shadows, and the walls seemed to close in on me. In the darkness, I felt an icy grip on my shoulder, and I turned to see a spectral figure, its face twisted in anguish. It spoke in hushed, sorrowful tones, recounting a tragic tale of love, betrayal, and a long-buried secret that had bound it to this cursed place for centuries. The ghostly figure reached out a skeletal hand, and I could feel the cold, clammy touch of its fingers as it whispered a name that sent chills down my spine. It was a name from my family's history, a name I thought was long buried with the past. I ran as if the hands of hell were chasing me, leaving the haunted cemetery behind. The unsettling horrors I had encountered that Halloween night were etched into my memory, and I knew that some mysteries were best left buried in the depths of the past, where they belonged. As I returned to town, the weight of the chilly encounter stayed with me, a reminder that the past had a way of resurfacing when least expected. The legends and secrets of that eerie cemetery would continue to haunt not just my nights, but the nights of anyone else who dared to tread into its accursed embrace. The history of Grey Cliff was darker and more unsettling than I could have ever imagined, and I had uncovered only a fraction of its grim reality. On late, cold and moonless Halloween night, my friends and I gathered for a small, intimate Halloween party in our seemingly ordinary suburban neighborhood. I had eagerly anticipated this night, as I had spent weeks preparing the decorations and planning the spooky atmosphere. As the host of the party, I had gone all out with the decorations. Cobwebs clung to every corner, candles flickered eerily, and ghostly apparitions lurked in unexpected places. We were all in costumes, from the whimsical to the macabre, and the night began with laughter and camaraderie. As we raised our glasses to our spooky soiree, I reveled in the ambience of the haunted house. We took turns sharing our favorite ghost stories, each tale trying to outdo the last, with hauntings, restless spirits, and eerie encounters taking center stage. The tension in the room grew with each story, and the eerie decorations played tricks on our minds, making us jump at shadows and creaks. As the hours passed, our initial excitement gave way to a creeping unease. Objects moved seemingly of their own volition, shifting on tables and crashing to the floor with a force we couldn't explain. Unnerving whispers, too faint to make out, filled the air, leaving us on edge. I decided it was time to investigate. Armed with a flashlight and trembling courage, I led my friends into the dimly lit house. The unease grew as we explored room after room, but the true terror awaited us in the basement. Hidden behind a stack of dusty boxes, we discovered an ancient book, its pages filled with cryptic symbols, grotesque drawings, and incantations in languages foreign to us. The sight sent shivers down my spine, and I realized this was no ordinary Halloween prank. In search of answers, we delved into the history of our seemingly peaceful neighborhood. What we uncovered was a history of witch trials, dark rituals, and persecution of a coven of malevolent witches who had once cursed the land. Their promise of revenge loomed over us, and the horrifying truth began to dawn. Our neighborhood, a place of tranquility, was but a facade concealing a malevolent secret. The spirits of those wronged in the past were exacting their revenge on the descendants of their persecutors, and we had unwittingly become part of this nightmarish cycle. Desperation fueled our quest to break the curse and escape the horrors. We embarked on a harrowing journey through the dark depths of the occult, with each passing hour bringing more malevolent entities, violent poltergeists, and the relentless fury of vengeful spirits. The very fabric of reality seemed to fray as we faced the inexplicable. As our bonds were tested and our courage pushed to its limits, I realized that understanding the curse's origins was our only hope of survival. It was a battle of wits, determination, and the sheer will to confront the unspeakable evil that had hidden in plain sight for so long. The night wore on, and we ventured into the heart of darkness. Our journey became a terrifying odyssey, an indelible memory of the horrors lurking beneath the veneer of our ordinary neighborhood. Especially on that moonless Halloween night. It was a night we would never forget, a chilling reminder that true terror can sometimes be closer than we ever imagined. In the days that followed, we dedicated ourselves to unraveling the mystery of the curse. Researching historical archives and consulting with experts in the occult, we learned more about the malevolent coven that had once inhabited our neighborhood. The more we uncovered, the more we realized the depth of the evil that had haunted us that fateful Halloween night. Haunted by the restless spirits and the specters of vengeance, we couldn't rest until we found a way to break the curse. Our efforts led us to a forgotten graveyard hidden in the woods, where the malevolent witches had been buried. We gathered what remained of their ashes and conducted a ritual of purification, hoping to release the tormented souls. As we chanted incantations and spread the ashes into the night, the air grew still, and an eerie silence settled over us. The curse was lifted, and the neighborhood was finally free from the malevolent grip of the past. Our Halloween night had been one of terror and darkness, but had also been a night of courage, unity, and ultimately, redemption. The following Halloween, we decided to celebrate with even more enthusiasm, this time without the shadow of the curse hanging over us. Our decorations were just as elaborate, our costumes just as creative, and our spirits even higher. We laughed, shared stories, and reveled in the haunted ambience, but this time, the only fear that filled the room was that of imaginary ghosts and friendly spooks. The memory of that Halloween night will forever remain with us, a reminder of the unsettling and disturbing events that had transpired in our seemingly ordinary neighborhood. But we have faced the darkness, uncovered the sinister secrets, and emerged stronger and closer than ever before, proving that sometimes the most unsettling stories can have a silver lining of resilience and friendship.